Much like songs, I don't remember titles or pattern names.
I can't spell it.
Did you, Cheers.
What are we drinking?
We're drinking Pool Boy Rosé,
Ooh.
which was a Whole Foods find. Comes in a plastic bottle, so ready to take to the poolside. Yeah,
It's so hot today.
it's really hot today. We left the one fan on, so we wouldn't die.
I'm Coco,
I'm Marika.
and we are Serial Knitters. This is a knitting podcast and some crafting outside knitting.
Yeah, because I can't knit fast enough to keep up with recording, so I've got to supplement it with other quicker projects.
Well, good news is we got a backlog of recordings, so we got time to catch up before these actually air.
Yeah, but I still have the set time in between recordings.
That makes sense. I don't know what I was saying. Yeah, because we do this every 2 weeks, and 2 weeks is 2 weeks. That makes sense. Okay, cool. I wrote down show notes this time to be a little more organized because I felt like last time was super brief because we didn't know what we were talking about.
Just off the cuff.
Yeah. Okay, so do you want to start with finished objects?
I have none, so I'll defer to you.
This is my finished object. It is I can't say it's in French. How do you say that word?
Villeneuve.
It's that tank top from Espace Tricot, which is a knitting store in Montreal. And they sometimes have free patterns. So this is a free pattern. I think generally it's kind of a nice gesture if you try to buy your yarn from them when you're using a free pattern. But I had some difficulties this week, so we're going to talk about those. But it led to me casting on a bunch of stuff and diving through my stash to try to find, to get a win. So this is it. So this stuff is all stash. It is Wool in the Gang, Billie Jean in, what are they? Raw denim, dirty denim, and then up at the top, it's backwards. I'm going to struggle. Up at the top, it is washed out denim. So it's knit from the bottom up, and once you separate from the back, it goes super fast. Because you're knitting so much less than a sweater would take. So
And no sleeves.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So I got to the point where I had finished the body, and I finished everything else in a day. Complete, all the way up the top to weaving in the ends. It was a late night last night. But it was the win I needed. So,
And this yarn is all recycled denim, right?
yeah, well, that's what they say.
Oh.
It's recycled jeans or something like that. When I first started knitting, well, once I got past the introductory stage of just knitting a scarf over and over again and some bad hats, I just got obsessed with this yarn. I liked that it was recycled and therefore, in my mind, a little bit more sustainable. And I just kept buying it every time I went into a yarn store. So I have so much of this yarn. Mostly in this color and then this one. And I had been knitting a yoga mat holder. But then I got one of those super thick yoga mats. Thicker than a usual one. And it's so heavy that I cannot put it inside of this cotton because it just weighs it down so much. I don't think it would ever function. And started going to a gym that provides yoga mats, so I didn't need to carry it with me everywhere. I just use it at home if I want to do a light yoga session.
Yeah, and this yarn, even though it's a cotton, since it's made of the recycled jeans, it's still got some of that stretchiness from some of the jeans, so it does have a lot of give.
Yeah, so I haven't blocked this out. because I was nervous that it was going to grow exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
So I just did like a really light wet block to like get the edge to lay down a little bit flatter. Mm-hmm. But I am nervous about how much it could grow. So changes that I did to the pattern, this top part here, it's supposed to go down to 4 stitches. Mm-hmm. And because my yarn was so heavy, mm-hmm. they suggest something that's a silk. I'm sure it must be very nice, mm-hmm. but it looks a little bit more light and kind of not flowy exactly, but a little bit more flowy than this is. Mm-hmm. So I was nervous that if I did this down to a 4, it would not have enough structure to mm-hmm. hold up the weight of this, because it's pretty weighty. Mm-hmm. So I only went down to a 6, and then to 6 stitches, and then I think that was the right choice, because if this thing gets wet, it's just gonna like go to the floor basically. Yeah. So that's a change that I did to the pattern, and I added just the color changes. So when I separated for the front and the back, that's when I chose to change colors. Mm-hmm. And then up here, I just kind of decided when my decreases were done, I changed the color.
So the original pattern is all one color?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they didn't tell you to do this. I did that. So good for summer. I'm obsessed with summer knits right now because mm-hmm. it's so hot.
Yeah, it's gotten real warm the last week here.
And I don't know. I'm trying to figure out like ways, because I spend so much time knitting. I just want to be in my knits more often. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of obsessed right now with the idea of figuring out how to wear knits at the gym, which I know sounds like a terrible idea, but I want to, I don't know, I'll just see. Like a good wrap after a yoga class, or something that's like, that you can wash and go, but I don't know. I'm at the gym a lot, so I want to be in my knits a lot. Mm-hmm. We'll see what comes of that. But this one could be a good, like, throw on after the gym, or throw on when you are going to take a class that you know you're gonna take the top off, because you're like in a cycling class when it's all dark, you're like, okay, I'll just take this off.
Yeah.
So that could be fine. It's a weird thing that I'm kind of obsessed with right now. So this is my finished object. New things that I learned while doing it were the bias bind off, which is very Pink Knits has a great tutorial on it, but it's basically like you slip your first stitch and then use that to cast off with, so that it's basically like slants the stitch, so that instead of getting like ladders or getting stair steps going up when you bind off, it binds off at a slope. Bias makes sense. But what I didn't really understand is here in the center, it asked you to do that technique, but you had knit across, and then you were supposed to bias bind off for this center portion. And I understand it going in one direction or the other, but I wasn't sure how I'm supposed to get one to start slanting this way and then the others to slant that way. So they're all just going in one direction, and then on this thing, going up this way, I've just got, there's a little bit of a break right here. It doesn't bother me. It's just something I'm not sure can be improved upon, but maybe somebody knows like a trick to how you're supposed to get it to, go either direction, slant in either direction, basically. So there's that.
Yeah.
Marika had a theory.
Yeah, pure theory, like not based in anything. But I was just thinking like maybe the directionality has something to do with the direction of the legs of the stitch,
Right.
So it would be similar to like when you make one right or make one left, depending on how you pick up that loop to make the stitch, that determines the direction it lays.
Yes. Possibly, except that you were still having to bind off 8 of them. So, which means crossing one over the top of the other one. So, if you have to choose a direction to go in, I felt like.
But if you did it from like the purl side, would it go the opposite way? Like if you flipped it around. So like if you're doing it from the front, everything's going this way. But if you flip it on the back, then it would go the opposite way.
That's what I ended up doing for the left side. Right side? Left side. Because, that was one thing about the pattern. So they tell you the directions to go up the first side. I think it's the left side. They tell you the directions for how to go up that one. But then you kind of have to think about how to reverse it for the other side. So on the other side, I was doing the bias bind off on the purls. But that wasn't clear in the instructions. So I just had to figure it out. But it was fine. It made sense. And I got through it. So you're right in that that's what happened. But when you have to bind off and go in two directions, I don't know how to do that. Okay. Or if it's even possible. Or if it's just something like, it's not really noticeable. So maybe, it's not something I even need to worry about. But it was a thing that came up.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Otherwise, it was a pretty easy pattern, and I would knit it again in a different sort of yarn. And
you said that the original one called for a silk, so you had to do some like gauge adjustments for this, or?
I ended up knitting a 36, even though I'm closer to a 39. But I was nervous that with this fabric it would be too voluminous, because it's such a heavier fabric that it's not gonna drape kind of nicely if it's a little bit oversized. So I went down to the 36 and then I knit it on a 7, even though I think the suggestion was an 8 or a 9. I think it was a 9. So I'm happy with how that turned out, but I did have to size it down because my yarn I think was a bit thicker than what they suggested.
Okay. Cool.
Good question. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so now we can move on to whips.
Yeah, I mean, I still got the same ones going, so I've got this is the progress made on the balloon cardigan. So I split off the arms.
I had a bag of chips on the floor.
Just looking for food.
Is he?
He's always looking for food. So I split the arms off, or cast them off, and then I'm almost done with the body. I've got the last buttonhole to make, and then 4 more rows of ribbing, and then I can bind off at the bottom and then go back and do the arms. So you can see, the buttonholes are on the left side. No, they're on the right side.
How was the process of making the buttonholes?
This
is the first time you've done it.
I was very skeptical. So, buttonhole. Just because it was just bind off 2, and then when you turn around, cast on 2. So it seemed like a fairly simple thing. They're not quite as neat as I would like them to be. They're just holes basically. So what I think I might do is go back in with, if I have some extra of this yarn, and just do kind of like a little stitch around them, just to kind of clean them up a little bit.
Because you want something to frame them, basically?
Yeah, I mean, sorry. I could block it in a way that they're a little more hidden, but I don't know. Still trying to figure it out. But I would like them neater than what they are now.
Okay.
Because they're kind of irregular, and they just look like mistakes as opposed to intentional buttonholes. But the reason I was able to make the buttonholes is because I finally got buttons for it. So I dumped them all out on the couch. So these are the buttons I got.
We'll take a better photo.
Yeah,
and
they're
insert
pretty small. They're basically a kind of leopard cheetah print. The color, matches the sweater pretty well in terms of the main color of the button. And then it's got these like orange splashes across it. And so they're about a 2.5 centimeter button, which is what the pattern buttonhole was based off of, like a 2 to 2.5 centimeter buttonhole. Or button was what the pattern buttonhole recommended. Yes. Yeah. So once I knew how big they were, then I was like, okay, I can just follow the pattern exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, so hopefully by the next time we film, that'll be totally done. And it's an alpaca cotton blend, the yarn is. So I'm hoping it'll be kind of like an all-season cardigan.
Yeah. I mean, definitely when the AC's kicking at work.
Yeah.
You can toss it on.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the summer.
Yeah. So, yeah, that'll be cool. And then, still working on the shirt dress. I haven't broken out the sewing machine yet. I'm still trying to organize all of that back there. So once that gets under control, I'll bring out the sewing machine and start finishing off that. I also bought, I think, 5 patterns online.
Right. Are we going to wait to talk about those when you get them in?
Yeah, I think maybe once I have fabric chosen for them. They're all PDF patterns, so I just have to print them. So I got a jumpsuit, a skirt, a shirt dress, and then kind of like a vintage cocktail dress pattern.
Right. Did I see that one?
Yeah, that was the one that was, it's like the short sleeve A-line skirt.
We'll see it.
Yeah. But anyway, so I'm in the process of, figuring out how to fit those in amongst the knits, and then I also have to go fabric shopping for those.
So you've got big sewing dreams.
Yeah, I mean, basically a total wardrobe overhaul that I'll make myself.
Nice.
In theory.
Okay, so then I guess we'll talk about me. I didn't expect you to run through all of yours so fast.
Yeah, there's not a lot happening right now.
Okay, so we'll start with the anchors because that sets off everything that else happened this week or the last week. So last time I showed the Anchors summer shirt is what it's called. So the Anchors summer shirt that I'm doing in the Purl Soho lantern, and this is the color Dogwood. And I got really far. I pretty much got to the end of it, and I just need to do like an inch more and then the ribbing at the bottom and then finish off the sleeves. But as is the way when you purchase something you don't really have a great idea beforehand, I am short. So right after this podcast I'm going to go on the website and order one more skein, and I really hope that it's not drastically different in color, because at this point I'm so deep I can't alternate colors. So it's gonna be what it is. Hopefully it's not too drastic. But I'm really liking it. It's very difficult on the hands, this yarn.
That yarn.
So
yeah, you had to stop for a little bit, right?
I did. I had like severe finger pain here in this center finger on the left hand side, because I was knitting continental. And I don't know, something about trying to keep tension on this yarn it just really aggravated the tendons in this finger, and I ended up having to take some time off, and I ran out of yarn at the same time, and then I decided I would knit something with huge needles so that at least I wasn't affecting that finger anymore. So this is going well. In the pattern, she recommends putting in a bit of elastic around the neckline to keep it from, pulling apart there. And I think I wasn't initially planning on doing it, but seeing how much stretch this has, I think I'm going to need to. So that's another aspect of it that I don't have the elastic for and need to go get. And so this one is taking a bit longer than I expected, but I'm really happy with how it's turning out, and I think it'll be a good daily wear for these hot summer days.
Yeah.
It's heavy.
Yeah, it's got a little heft to it.
It's heavy, and it's not rustic, but kind of coarse.
It's open.
Yeah. So we'll see how it all ends up.
Yeah. But it's coming along well, and you can actually see, I know
Yeah.
we were concerned that the yoke wouldn't show up in this yarn, that yoke pattern, but
it's a little hard in the bright sunlight here if I turn too close to the windows. But when you turn away, it's got some nice... It works, at least. So I'm excited about that. I just can't really work on it right now until I get another skein.
We're both working on PetiteKnit patterns.
Yes.
And I think we both had a few struggles with them, just in terms of, like, clarity of direction.
Yeah, so, I can't remember the podcast that I was watching. So right before I cast this on, if I can think of it, we'll add it. But I was watching a podcast where a woman had knit this one, and she was saying that her experience of knitting this pattern was that it was not as clear as maybe like a Caitlin Hunter pattern is. That maybe it's a product of how Europeans write their patterns. Jump cut. So we were talking about both working on a PetiteKnit pattern, and so the experience of knitting it is that it's not quite as clear. It doesn't tell you every row what you're supposed to be doing. It assumes like that I told you to knit 2, and now I'm going to say just repeat 7, and then you should know to repeat 7. You know what I mean? Like it has a brevity to it.
And some of that might be translation, because obviously we're doing the English translation patterns. And then, I think some of it too is just, at least for me, being pretty new to knitting, I found that with the balloon cardigan, it was like, okay, I've got to read this like 3 or 4 times. I've probably got to try it 1 or 2 times. Like when I was starting the collar cast on, like you cast on like a set number of stitches and start the ribbing, and then you have to go back and cast on another set to the end of what you did, and then you pick up from there and then that's what creates the whole back of the sweater. And I had to do that collar, the start of the back of the collar, probably about 3 or 4 times before I was like, oh, okay, this is the way you do it.
Yeah. My pattern was pretty simple, but I'm not sure that when I saw your raglan, I was like, I'm not sure I understood what the raglan was doing. So you can't really see it from here, but I just did make ones, and it doesn't quite have that kind of folded look that your raglan has. So I'm not sure if that's right or if it's how it was intended, but there's sleeves. It's fine. So yeah, it's a little vague, or just a little... I don't know that I would suggest it to somebody who had never knit a sweater of any kind. First.
I think it's just, you just have to be very diligent about it. Like, I make a lot more notes on the PetiteKnit patterns. Like, I really have to be really diligent about keeping track of rows and keeping track of stitch numbers and all that kind of stuff. So there's like, all sorts of little tick marks to keep track of rows and all of that in my PetiteKnit patterns that aren't there in other patterns. But
something to look out for, or to think about. I just wouldn't do it if it were my very first sweater I had ever knit.
But they are beautiful, beautiful objects when you're done.
Argus agrees.
Yeah. Okay,
so because I had to wait on that Purl Soho order, which I still haven't made. Every day I say I'm going to make it, and then I don't make it. But because I had to wait on that, I cast on this, and then finished this.
And then to give your finger a break,
to give my finger... Well, before I did this one, to give my finger a break, I ended up starting to knit a blanket from some stash yarn that I had purchased a long time ago. One of the, Joanne doorbuster sales, they had this Bernat Big Maker, which is a chainette. It's around I think it's a cotton interior, maybe it's nylon. maybe it's nylon and cotton. It's 50% nylons, 50% cotton. So it's a chain around something that feels like a cotton batting in the center, and it is very much like a t-shirt material. So I took some photos, and we can put them up, but I'm going to show Marika real quick. I ended up knitting this I ended up using the 10 stitch blanket, which is a blanket that you knit from the inside out, because I didn't know how many skeins I had or would need, or how big this blanket was going to end up being. I decided to try to find a pattern that I could start in the center and basically just stop when I felt like I was ready to stop. It's not, we'll post some photos, but it's not very neat, but it's working.
Do you think when you block it out, it'll even out a little bit?
It might, but I also just did some weird stuff.
Okay.
Like, I didn't quite understand how the joining was happening, and I ended up fudging it on a couple of the first couple of rows, and so the way that the 10 stitches are connected to the other 10 stitches, it's not a great look right now, but it's fine. I mean, so it's kind of lap blanket sized right now, and my husband was like, this is great. This would be a great summer blanket because it's pretty, it's like a t-shirt, and it's got a lot of holes in it, but we're struggling with, we don't have air conditioning, so the blanket that we have is too heavy. We can't use it, and I don't like just sleeping with a sheet. I need that weight on me. So he was like, oh, you can make it big enough to make it a summertime blanket. But the challenge is that we have a king size bed. So
a lot of yarn.
Yeah, I showed like in the photos, I have it on one side. It's kind of like a lap blanket sized at this point, and then in order to get it across the whole bed, I've got to double it in size. And Joanne's not selling this yarn anymore. I'm not sure if it's discontinued, so now it's going to be a matter of like,
can you find it?
Can I even find it? And how many of them can I find? And then that'll be how big this blanket is. So this is the last ball I have from my stock. And then everything after this is going to be whatever I can find.
Yeah. So you've been doing some serious stash busting lately.
Yes. So when I started knitting, I bought like really big yarns. One, because I just liked the look of those chunky yarns.
Like that hat you did that we showed in the first one.
Yeah, and I still do. Like there's so many
I feel like
favorited ones that are super chunky.
And I feel like it stitches too. Like they had a lot of sample knits, for the patterns that they were selling. And it was like, if it was a chunky sweater, you were in it immediately. You were like, all right, let's try it on. Let's see what it's like. What do I need to get?
I guess ethically, I don't have fur, but I want faux fur, everything. And part of that is I just like the size, the presence of it. And that's why I like super chunky knits as well.
And they're just faster to knit too.
They are. I've never knit a chunky knit sweater. I just really love them. I knit it on a size US 50. It's a 25 millimeter needle. My husband called them comically large, and they are comically large. But it's really great. So speaking of big knits, I also bought a bath mat from Target, and it has, I don't know, it was white with like a yellow flower in the center of it, and it attracted every piece of dirt in the entire house. It is disgusting after 1 month. I don't know what happened to it. So I'm knitting or crocheting just simple granny squares from Wool and the Gang's mixtape, and I'm going to try to make a new bath mat to replace this because it's really harsh on my vibe in there. So just simple, easy crochet granny squares. we'll see how many of these I get, because this is also stash yarn that I haven't I do not have, a measured out quantity to make this project. Mm-hmm. It's merely however many I can make of these squares. Hopefully it's a respectable size bath mat, or I'm going to have to buy more yarn.
You're just going to be stuffing out on 2 little pot holders.
Pretty much. I've got 2 already, so we'll see.
Okay, so you'll probably get maybe at least 4.
Yeah. So my struggle recently has been, I am starting things and then they are not fully thought out, and I'm ending up having to stop them and then restart something new, and it's not really my favorite way to do things, because I just don't like having a lot of things open at the same time, I guess. I feel like it's
You've switched to my technique.
Yes.
And you're not enjoying it.
I'm not enjoying it, because I feel it makes me feel like things are, unfinished and weighing on me. Mm-hmm. Speaking of which. Mm-hmm. So I have started my second Coffee Talk sock, because you asked me about it so many times.
Yeah, because every other day I'm like, how's that sock going? You got that second sock done?
So it's not done, clearly, but it is started. And I don't know, I don't remember how I knit the first one. I don't feel like I knit it on double pointed needles, but when...
I think you magic looped it. Because I think because you magic looped the first one, and then you did Cameron's, and you did both of them at the same time, magic looped. And then you were like, I'm never knitting 2 socks at the same time again.
I understand philosophically that you get done at the same time, but it takes twice as long to do the same thing. Or not the same thing, but the same thing. You're knitting the same pattern, and it takes twice as long. You're knitting 2 socks. You're going to have to do it twice. But in my mind, I need that one finished portion to spear me on to the second one. I say that knowing that I waited on this one, but that's because I knit the same socks 2 more times, in the middle. So,
for your husband, whose feet are much larger than yours, so more knitting required for both those pairs of socks.
So, this is the I showed it before, but I'll just show you. This is the Coffee Talk sock from Tracie of the Grocery Girls. I still don't have a sock blocker, so it's not the most beautiful showing of said sock, but if you go online, a lot of people have knit it. So it's got this pattern of 4 rows that 4 rows? Yeah, 4 rows make this kind of ridged pattern on the top, and then it's got a different contrast for cuffs, toes, and heel. So, and I'm doing it out of the Knit Picks. Pickle Juice is this hot green, and then I forget what this one is. Some kind of confetti of some type. I don't have it in here.
Did we do it on the first episode, maybe?
Hopefully. Oh, it's definitely in the show notes of the first episode, and it'll be in the show notes of this one, because I'll copy and paste. But, so I'm doing this one on double pointed needles, because I couldn't remember how I did it the first time, and I was struggling that the pattern says to knit it on a US size 1. I could not find a US size 1, so then I was like, oh, I guess I didn't knit it on a US size 1.
These obviously you would own them if
I would
you
own
did
them
it.
if I had done it. Exactly. And then I didn't have a US size 2 that was like a 9-inch circular. So then I was at a loss as to what I had done. So I used the double pointed needles, which is fine. I learned to knit socks on a double pointed needles, and I'm not intimidated by it. I think it's kind of fun. It feels nice when somebody walks up and you're knitting on double pointed needles and they're like, what is that? It's like witchcraft. So, I like that it kind of feels hard. So that's it. I mean, this is a sock. We're going to get through it, and then I'll have a pair. Which I bought roller skates, because it's been a lifelong dream to own roller skates. And I'm kind of obsessed with knitting hand knit socks to wear with my roller skates. They are like a dusty pink, not just regular pink. They're just a regular pink. Of course, that's the color I bought. So they're pink, and I'm kind of excited about knitting crazy colored socks to go with it, even if it's just the cuff that ends up being visible over the skate, or not, and we'll see if that's a bad idea. Who knows if wearing hand-knit socks while skating is a terrible idea. We'll find out in the weeks to come. But I'm kind of excited about that. Part of it is that at work they repaved the parking lot, and it's so smooth that I'm like, okay, I can at least practice out here and see if it works, if it's a good idea or not, or do I need to go just to a skating rink. But I don't know, it's something I bought, so I'm very excited about knitting a bunch of hand knit socks for my skates.
Yeah,
we'll see how that goes. Okay, so to recap, got stalled on the Anker sweater, ended up knitting this from stash in full, started this blanket and knitting the bath mat and started the sock, and all of that happens because I had a failure to plan correctly. So much stuff. So those are all of my work in progresses.
Yeah, me just keep trucking along on all the projects I had going from the start. I was able to finish the Pride sweater and RBG so far. Hopefully by the next time the balloon cardigan will be done, and then I'll have started on either the As If tee, or I ordered some Lion Brand Kobu yarn to do kind of like a more summery shirt. It's called, I think, Lang Long. I can't remember the designer's name, but we'll put it in the show notes. But it's just kind of like, an open weave, drapey kind of cap sleeve shirt. And the Kobu is 50% cotton, 50% bamboo rayon. So everyone says it's really soft, but that it does kind of unravel a lot. It's can be somewhat difficult to knit with just because the strands come apart.
This one, so let me just pop in and say, so this was highly problematic in that regard. There was a lot of splitting, and then the worst part was weaving in the ends, because in order to thread a needle, you need all of those threads to stay together. So I used the tapestry needle with the biggest eye, and I would highly recommend it. I think I got it from my mom bought like one of those kids craft things from Barnes and Noble, and it for some reason had this huge tapestry needle in it. I don't even remember what it was to make, but years later I have saved this huge tapestry needle, so it's blunt on the end so that kids can use it, and it's got a huge eye so that kids can thread it. And it was the saving grace on this one, because I just could not get the threads to stick together enough to thread a needle. So that was pro tip. If you happen to buy a kid's kit and it comes with a really dull, huge-eyed needle, keep it, because it'll help you on, knits that, or thread yarns that split. That's what I need to say.
Yeah, and also that I have to double check the needle size that the pattern calls for, because my needle of choice are the Haya Sharp.
Right.
Which I have definitely injured myself knitting with before, but I still love them so much because they help, at least for me, prevent that. Like, I can keep speed while knitting, and not have to worry about as much about splitting the yarn. Like, it just is a lot easier for me to get into stitches and stuff like that with those guys.
Yeah.
But I think I did break every blood vessel in my finger because I was trying to push on the end of the needle.
Yeah.
And then I felt something pop in the tip of my finger, and then it was real sore for about a week afterwards. So definitely be careful with them, but I love them anyway.
Since we're talking about tools, I really dislike the sound of metal needles scraping metal needles. It's so.
I feel like I can just block it out. Yeah. It's like a white noise machine to me.
I feel like I can feel it in my bones. It's real problematic for me because, my backup, if everything goes wrong, set is Knit Picks, and they're metal needles, and I wish I had bought the wooden. So I have a set of the interchangeable Leicas that are my favorite. I use them for everything. I even bought like 2 size 8s so that when my 8s are in use, I've got another set of 8s that I can just put onto a cord. In the Leicas. They're not very sharp, but they don't scrape metal on metal. So whenever I have to use the metal ones, I don't know. It's not as pleasant of an experience for me. So that's a weird thing.
Yeah.
It's a weird personal issue.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the metal needles.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
I like the sharp ones. The Addies, I'm still trying. I have a bunch of Addy double pointed needles, and I do enjoy those because they have, a sharper end and then a blunter end. But I don't know. Jury's still out on the Addies, but Haya, I'm 100% on board. Metal, sharp, yes. So,
okay.
Looking to the future.
Last thing. So I feel like I have discussed and talked about this shibui twig finding for weeks now, ever since I bought it. And every time I'm like, I'm going to make a tank top. I'm going to do something. But initially I had thought I would make this tank top in the shibui twig. And I still might because I have both a purple and an orange color. In the orange I only have 3 skeins. In purple I have 4. But I think next I'm going to do the ranunculus, which I'm showing Marika now.
Okay. See, I've only seen
This one.
that one. I haven't seen the more delicate version.
So apparently you can do this in like any weight, and I don't know if that's. I need to do some more research, but I have seen it in this kind of the cover page when you first click onto it. The cover shot is it looks kind of like a DKO or a worsted. And then I have seen people do it holding mohair and a fingering weight together. And then two people have made it in shibui twig. And it has more of this like open weave to it. They say that it works. So I'm going to try it. I've got this purple color into the center. Kind of, yeah, so... One day. Well, maybe we'll take a photo close up. But it is 190 yards for 1 skein. I've got 4 skeins. Math. I hope it's enough.
760-ish?
Nice. Sure. It's 46% linen, 42% recycled silk, 12% wool.
Little stuff. Yes.
I knit things that are much more stiff, rustic, and experimental than Marika, which is kind of funny.
Because I am.
You're so experimental in everything else.
Yeah, and I'm very hippie, I guess I would say.
Yeah, but I don't feel like you would ever make something out of hemp, and I'm like, bring it on.
No, I'm like, give me all of the cashmere and the mohair and just
soft,
yeah.
plush.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't.
It's my Taurus nature.
I think it is
all of the luxury.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
I don't think it has anything to do with my zodiac sign. The things that I choose. I just whatever. So that's kind of funny that I'm more. Because Marika likes everything experimental, except for her yarns.
Nope.
I'm really obsessed with this one yarn that a French podcaster, Yarn Flakes, was talking about. It's a bamboo mix. I think it's blue-faced Leicester, which is a type of sheep, and bamboo mix. I'm gonna buy it. It's gonna happen. I put it in my notes, and I'm like, it's $25 a skein though, so we'll need to make a plan for that one because it's kind of like it's gonna be a splurge. But I'm really excited to try it, and then I'm really excited about your cotton and bamboo and rayon situation that you're gonna get in.
Yeah,
I just like the weird ones. So.
Yeah, I'm excited for the Kobu. One, because every review I've read said it's really soft and nice, other than the splitting issue. And then two, because it's a Lion brand commercial yarn, so it's really affordable. So I bought enough basically to make 2 garments, because I couldn't, none of the stores in town had it in stock, and so I couldn't see the colors in person, and I was torn between 2 colors, so I just bought enough in both, figuring I could return one. But it was like, I found a coupon, and it was like $30, including shipping, to buy enough for 2 garments, which is like, you know, some of these yarns, that's a single skein.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping it'll be a good option.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's it. I've drunk all of my drink. We can't cheers at the end.
I know, I drank all of mine too.
We need another pool boy. Hello.
Yeah.
Pool boy.
We need a pool boy to bring us some pool boys.
So that's it.
Yeah.
Happy knitting.
Yay.
Yep. Argus is excited.
Oh, I thought it was going to be a frame.